I am Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. This week's episode is one of the most emotional and heart-wrenching stories I've ever documented. James Teitscheid discusses the loss of his teenage daughter by suicide. He shares his story in the hopes of saving even one life. Please listen to this podcast as he sheds light on one of the most tragic events a parent will ever have to face. Hello, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. I'm here today with Jamie Teitscheid. How are you, Jamie?
I'm good, man. How are you?
You know, I'm good. This is going to be a tough podcast, I think, for both of us. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Agreed.
We're going to start off by letting everybody know that we're actually talking about you and your daughter had committed suicide. And there is no one that I think is better at doing this podcast than you are. And let me tell you why I say that. I've met with you before, and we've discussed this. Right after you were like, I'm saving some lives somewhere. And you went at it from like a warrior type of perspective. I know you're a bodybuilder. I know you're a guy that takes the bull by the horns. And I think I've even had people say that, hey, it's too early. You shouldn't do it. It's too early. And I'm like, not this guy. I think too early has never been said, but too late is always a problem. So if you don't mind, I want you to start in. I'm gonna lead you through some of the questions that I think we have and a lot of the listeners are gonna have. But I want you to come straight from the heart, and I know that's the only way you know how. So,
Absolutely.
So we're gonna get going. I wanna first talk about you and I talked a little bit off camera about statistics, and you know I didn't bring out any statistics because I don't know how much that matters.
You know, as you and I have talked in the past, I've looked up a lot of information regarding suicide, and the information that you find is really skewed toward who's trying to tell the story, what their intentions are, and at the end of the day, other than the fact that all suicides are up, and especially adolescent suicides. That's about the only statistic that means anything to me.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that, I think so many times we try and figure out the answer, and I think the answer is probably in the questions.
Agreed.
So when we talk about this, number one, I want everybody to know that this is no sensationalism. We're not doing anything but talking straight from your heart as a dad that lost a child. And I have children. Couldn't put myself in your shoes, not even for a second, but I want to see what your shoes look like because I know it'll help me. And I know it'll help a ton of other listeners that are out there. And I actually want kids to hear this. I want kids to see it. I want the parents to see it. And I do believe that at the end of today's podcast, we're going to save a life or two.
Sounds great.
I think it's awesome. So tell me a little bit about Katey.
Katey was a very unique young lady, a lot like me. She was born on the 4th of July, which explains a lot in itself. She was a hard charger, just like me, and she did what she wanted to do on her terms. That's the way she lived her life. And ultimately, it's a weird way to look at it, but it's also the way she died.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. If we don't talk about the difficult things that are in front of us, then what are we going to accomplish?
Man, I couldn't agree more. That's why, again, I told him, I said, this is the guy. This is the guy right here. And I think this will make some changes, some serious changes. So did you know that she had any issues or thoughts about suicide?
Yeah, almost to the point of the boy who cried wolf. Countless times, I couldn't even tell you how many times Katey had talked about suicide or mentioned suicide, or even threatened suicide, and it, had gotten to a point where we really were desensitized to it. She'd been evaluated by a number of medical professionals, and the outcome was always the same, that she's not a credible threat. of course, I had to take the consensus from the medical professionals, because I'm certainly not trained in that area at all, which is something that we need to talk about as parents. That if we're not trained at all, we don't have any of the tools to deal with these things or even recognize these things unless they're incredibly obvious. We don't. If you don't have any tools in the toolbox, how do you fix anything?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all about knowledge, right?
It is.
And one of the things that we talked about on a pre-interview that we did, my oldest had talked about it, and again, kind of come back as a non-credible threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but it still shook me to the core, and I'm like, why the hell would you even say that? And I think so many people are sitting here and they're thinking, you know what, my kids never thought about it, but there's probably a whole lot that have.
Yeah, it's from the very beginning. After Kate died, I've been very vocal on in conversations as well as social media about the situation and what happened to her, and even took the opportunity at her service to have a professional get up and talk about suicide, which caught a lot of people off guard, but it's an opportunity to have an audience of 600 plus where we thought we could make a little bit of a difference, and so we took that opportunity.
I loved it. I was there, and I thought that was amazing, absolutely amazing. I thought that was absolutely the right thing to do. Again, there are a lot of people that are just like, you got to give these things some time. Hell no, time is what we don't have.
Exactly. And that's why right out of the gates, I wanted to try to see if I could make some sort of a difference. So I was vocal about it, and I've had countless people contact me, usually with direct messaging, nothing that anybody else can see, but direct messaging on social media and text message and those mediums that it gave them the courage to have the difficult conversations with their kids, or that they had that situation in their family, or directly with their kids, or they had a brother or sister or an uncle. It seemed like everybody is somehow connected to suicide or mental health that results in a death, and I had no idea. I've never been connected to a situation before, and it's something that people don't talk about. There's a fear associated with it, almost to the point where discussing it is going to perpetuate somebody following through with something, and if we don't talk about it, they won't.
No, I love that statement, because I think it's as true as it gets. I think it is. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, I was at the service, and I did the same thing. I went home and talked to my kids, and I just told them, I said, listen, I can't go through that pain. I can't do it. And it was a very interesting conversation with my kids. And, what is even crazier about that is they already knew a bunch of kids that they could name by names that they knew had talked about it. How do you think, even after the professional says she's not a credible thought, do you think that you got good information then?
You have to take the information that you get and mix it with your own thoughts, because you can have teachers who have access to your children, you can have doctors who have access to your children, but ultimately it's you and I as parents who have more access to our kids than anybody does.
Yeah.
And so I think we're in the best position to know when there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, there's nothing I've thought about more than what could I have done differently.
Did you come up with anything?
I think that we get busy. We get busy in life, and to take those opportunities. And this sounds like a cliche when it comes out of my mouth, but if we take the time to take that temperature on a regular basis, sit down without any distractions around, look our kids in the eye and ask them how they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think if we did that and turned off all the white noise, that we'd probably find out that everything wasn't okay.
You know, I'm going to paint this picture. So I'm at the service, and I'm watching the pictures, and I'm hearing stories from people who knew her. As a matter of fact, I sat right by one of the teachers that had taught her for quite some time. And, of course, everybody knew you. Everybody knew the family. And I'm watching these pictures float by, and it's happy. It's like happy. It's like, look, a normal childhood.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, my God, you know what? This kid's on the couch, you're talking about her taking the candy, candy holic, and hiding it and sneaking it and all that good stuff. And, all the people that were so sad by the incidents. I mean, there was love all over that damn building. And it makes me wonder exactly what it was that day that made her feel like there wasn't, or it might not even been to that. Do you think there was it was depression or something more like that?
I think that through a process of evaluation that, unless it's a situation of this, something that is just I'm going to say crime of passion, but you have two types of situations when it comes to suicide. Somebody that plans it out in advance, carries it out, and then
Spontaneous.
impulsive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So impulsive is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So, I believe that in Kate's particular situation, that it was a very impulsive act.
Did she have any medical diagnosis?
She did
of depression
not.
or anxiety or any of that?
No, she didn't. And again, we had her evaluated. When you get into the mental health realm, it's really difficult to find somebody who's good.
Yeah.
You have, this is probably going to anger some people, but you have,
It's okay. It's
you
truth
have
talks.
all the way from community college, therapists, counselors, all the way to, doctorates, very professional. That doesn't necessarily make them good or bad.
Right.
But it's really difficult to find somebody who is good. And I'll tell you what, the people that are good, you can't see them.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a situation where the people that need mental health help need it now.
Yeah.
They don't need it in 3 months.
Yeah.
When these doctors are available.
It's never
They need
too
it right
early.
now.
It's always too late.
So that was such a strange thing that we kept coming across, is that we would hear about these good doctors, and you couldn't get to see them. They have more people that want to see them than they can possibly see.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a problem.
It is real. It's
That's
a
a problem.
huge problem.
You said something to me that stuck with me so freaking hard, and I almost sat there and thought to myself, man, I hope it isn't true. But you mentioned that if there had been a puppy there, you don't think it would have happened.
I believe that, and that's kind of an example. Kate loved puppies. That's so that came to me right away.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, if I was there when this was happening, I could have stopped it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, obviously I wasn't there. There was nobody else there. What could have been intact in the situation that would have helped her out, and for her it would have been a puppy.
Yeah.
Now, which kind of brings me to the most important thing about that is that when you have a 13-year-old kid, you can't approach them from the suicide prevention that we as adults think and talk about. It's not at their level.
Right.
We need to meet them where they are.
No, I agree with that.
And sitting down with some 65-year-old guy with gray beards,
Yeah.
versus give them a puppy. And I'll tell you which one of those two is going to be more effective,
Yeah.
and it's a puppy.
Yeah. And that's the truth.
Simple, meet them where they are. And to do that, you have to talk to them. You got to talk to them on a regular basis. You got to You got to figure out what's going through their head, and to do that, you have to have you have to talk to them regularly. Well, life gets busy.
Yeah.
Life gets busy.
That's not okay.
Well, for me, I've got a son. Just
Yeah.
turned 18 last week, and so for me, it's front and center every day.
Yeah.
You don't forget about it. You don't get busy and forget about
That's
it.
exactly right, yeah.
So my approach with him has been completely different story. I've got him full time, and I get up in the morning, I go downstairs and I check on him. I call him 4 or 5 times throughout the day. I check on him as soon as I get home from work. And he likes to hang out with me a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So, he goes down to his room and he's on video games, especially right now with this stupid pandemic.
Yeah, right.
But, and honestly, I get up 2 or 3 times in the middle of the night. I wake up at 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30. I walk downstairs, from the second floor all the way down to the basement, check, make sure he's breathing.
Yeah. Are you scared to death?
Am I scared of death itself?
Are you scared to death? Like, is it crucially important for you to make sure that he's around?
Yes.
I mean, more so. Not the obvious that you want your kid around, but
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask that because it's like I went back 18 years because when he was first born, I had him a lot of nights because my ex-wife was working swing shift and graveyard shift as a police officer, and so I had I don't know anything about fatherhood, and I got all of a sudden this little
Right.
little live creature, and I remember I would sleep on the floor, and I had him in this wicker basket so that I could sleep right next to him, and I'd wake up 10, 20, 30 times during the
Yeah.
night and just to make sure he was breathing. I feel like I went back 18 years, but it's always front and center with me.
I think it's important for, again, you and I, we're kind of no bullshit kind of guys, and I think for dads, I think we do get a little too busy or get into ourselves and doing a lot of things, and I know for me, I rely on my wife a lot to take care of a lot of that stuff, and that's not okay. I'm not holding up my end of the bargain on that either, and I just think that. I think sometimes we're working and things are going good and life is going good and you're on the lake and you're doing these things and you just assume that they're feeling that, but it's happening too often.
And it's almost like you want it to be that good.
Yeah.
And you want to pretend that, you look at the situation, how can, and I look at Kate's life, and, she went through some things. She went through a divorce with me and her mother. And she went through, me having to travel for work a lot in the last 3 years after the divorce. So she had to deal with some things, but even today when I look back on her life, and I was talking to my son about this last night because we talk about it.
How's
I
he
wouldn't
doing?
say daily, but we still talk about it.
Is he doing okay?
Yeah, I mean, it is okay as you can be.
Yeah.
I just don't think that he's mature enough to be able to process this the way it needs to be processed. So,
Yeah.
He's probably got to unpack this over a long period of time.
Yeah. As you will.
As I will too, and I'm a lot. I guess statistics again here, but the brain's not fully developed until 25 years of age, and
Yeah.
he's just turned 18. So, how is this going to affect him? 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 20 years from now.
Yeah. But I think it's an eye opener. It's like, you're checking that he's breathing at 19, and I don't see that stopping with you. I think
No.
you'll end up going over to his house when he's 40 and being like, hey, what you got going on there?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you asked me 6 months ago, with him being a senior and off to college next year, if you would have, I would have said, man, I can't wait.
Yeah.
He's just at that point where he's ready to get some independence, and I'm ready for him to get some independence. And Now, with this pandemic, and I read today that a lot of the universities are already announcing that they're going to do
Yeah.
online school only next year. And I got to say, man, I'm glad. And he's committed to CSU, and when I read that today, I thought, you know what? If I can keep this kid at home for another year, I can keep him safe.
Yeah.
And 6 months ago, I would have said, oh, he needs to go to college, man. He needs to get out on his own. Now, I want to keep that kid as close as I can
Yeah.
for as long as I can.
Yeah, no,
Because I can check on him, 30 times a day like I am.
Yeah.
And that's something different in and of itself, because you can't save.
Has he
you
said
can't
any-
save anybody.
It's
At
true
the end
story.
of the day, man, people got to make their own decisions.
Does he say, hey, Dad, you know what? I'm good. 20 times a day is enough.
He gets a little irritated from time to time,
It's all right.
But you know what? I'm pretty open with him. When he gets irritated with me, I just tell him, hey, you know what? I'm just doing this because I love you. And
Yeah.
he softens pretty quick when I say that.
Yeah. Man, tell me about that day.
Oh, for me, it's a strange situation. Last couple of years, I had been driving out on Monday mornings out to Nebraska, staying out there for work until Friday nights, coming back, and this was a Wednesday, so I was out. Actually, my boss, who is in Denver, was actually out there in Nebraska, and we were out. We had just gotten to dinner, and I got a phone call from my ex-wife. Telling me that she thinks there's something really wrong. She had actually been traveling on business and just landed back in Denver, and gotten a phone call from her mother, who was watching Kate, giving her some unclear information. And at this point, Kate was already dead, and the police were there. My ex-wife's mother was there. One of her friends was there. But the police wouldn't allow them to tell us, either of us, what happened, until one of us got to the house.
Was that protocol or something?
Apparently, we'll get into this a little bit more, I'm sure, but I had a conversation with one of the cops the day after she died. That's the last time I've talked to him. The one and only time I've talked to him. So I didn't. As far as I was concerned at that point, my daughter was dead, and the details were unimportant.
Yeah.
I'm assuming at this point that was protocol. But I immediately knew something was very wrong. Either she was gravely hurt or she was dead.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't confirm either of those things. So my boss, we walked right out of the restaurant, got in his truck, and started driving back to Colorado, which is 4.5 hour drive from where I was. And for about
4.5 hours, you don't know.
Well, for about 30 minutes of that, I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
My ex-wife got to the house and found out, and immediately called me. So I had 4 hours of that 4.5 hours driving back, and all I could do was sit there. I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I can still. I don't think I've ever been more uncomfortable in my life. I couldn't do anything.
No protection, no nothing.
No, and all I could do is ride back. I never went to the house. That night I just got back, and all I could think about was Tyler.
Where'd you go?
So I live with my fiance, and he lives with us, and so I just went there, and all I could think about was making sure that he was okay,
Yeah.
and that being there with him to make sure. I don't think I left his side for, I don't know, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But, you know, I went into protection mode. What can I still protect?
Yeah.
And he was it.
Yeah. And that's definitely your personality, is like you're the protector. I mean, I see it. I've seen it and posted. And, you know, I see you post pictures of her, and that's obviously a way you deal with it, right?
It is, you know, sometimes it seems pointless and foolish, but it's a way for me to celebrate her life,
Yeah.
you know, through pictures, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah. You know, I have, I've sat there and I thought about it, and of course, you know, you're a good friend of my wife, and, you know, we've had a lot of talks about it, and this is what I think people need to get, is you got to do this your own way. There's no playbook. And I don't know if I would have the strength. And you know what? She promptly reminded me, says, you don't know how you would do it. And I think that's one of the things that I was like, when I would see that from you, I was like, man, that guy he's rock solid. I don't know how you do that. It's just one of those things that you just pray to God that never happens. You just pray to God.
Yeah, and I think that you know, for me, it's you know, again, it's the expression of almost, you know, I remember something somebody said to me a number of years ago, and this is long before, you know, anything obviously was in my mind about Kate or you know, potential of her dying, but they said, they told me that, you know, or I think I read it actually, it's that you actually die twice. You die when you stop breathing, and then you die a second time when somebody says your name for the last time. So that stuck with me, that after she died, I said, you know, what can I do to keep her alive? And I can say her name. I can say her name.
Yeah.
Every day.
Tell me when the days following, did you have a lot of support?
I had a ton of support. I've got luckily my family's right here. My mom and my dad and my sister and her family. My brother flew out from Minnesota. My fiance was amazing, and I've got, you know, I grew up here, and so there's still a large community of people that...
Yeah, seen them all.
Yeah. And I've got, you know, my boys.
Was it...
the nine guys who were there the next day.
Yeah. Did... was that crucially important?
Yes. Because, you know, I don't know if it was so much support, because I kind of mourn alone. I don't need strength from anybody. I've never drawn strength from, since she died, since Kate died. I haven't drawn strength from anybody to move forward. But what that did for me, and what it still does for me, especially at the time, it made me feel normal.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at the time, you feel so fucking abnormal. I mean, the day after Kate died, my son said something to me. He said, Dad, this doesn't happen to us.
Yeah.
Because we know what happens, right? We know that people die, and kids die, because you read it in the paper and you hear it on the news, but you don't think it's going to happen to you, you know? And so, you know, that was such a telling statement that he said to me, you know, that...
I think all of us walking around thinking it's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. It's not, this doesn't happen to us.
Yeah.
So, and you think, I mean, for a period of time, I felt like, yeah, this only happened to me. I'm the only dad that this happened to, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody else here, That everybody that's trying to help me, I love you guys and I appreciate it, but you get to go home to your kids.
Yeah.
This is, you don't know how I feel.
Did anybody tell you they knew how you felt?
Some people along the way will say things to try to make a connection with you.
Yeah.
They all mean it. There's no malice involved in it.
Yeah.
They just want to connect with you and try to make you feel not so alone.
Yeah.
So they do say things like that. They have a parent who died recently, or somebody that was important to them that died.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've thought through a lot, because when you lose a kid, it's like nobody else knows this kind of pain.
Even if they lost their own, you probably feel that way.
Yeah, and I've reached out to a number of people that have lost kids, and I mean, I it's a strange connection that I have with a couple of people, a couple of women that are around my age who lost kids right around Kate's and Tyler's age, that I talk to on a fairly regular basis. That it's just like this secret society that nobody wants to be part of.
Yeah. Or talk about.
Yeah, or talk about that, but they want to talk about it.
Would it be different? And you may not. I mean, you're just shooting off the cuff, but would it be different if it was a car accident?
I've thought about that, and so I have a certain view on this, and it took me. Okay, let me back up a little bit here. When I didn't know what happened, I thought, for days, I thought to myself, this was an accident. Somehow it was an accident, because I didn't want to wrap my head around the fact that she died of suicide. By the way, they get after you for that. If you say committed suicide, that's not PC in the suicide community. I look at it, there's no way that somebody dies by suicide that isn't significantly mentally ill. Okay? In my opinion, and again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a dad.
You don't have to be.
We missed it with Kate. Kate was mentally ill, significantly, enough to kill herself. And we missed it. But I don't look at that. That is an illness, just like cancer, just like heart disease, just like anything else, any other illness that kills somebody.
Right.
So, I kind of package it up in that same category of that she died from an illness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, great. It's a great thought process.
Which might be something that makes me sleep a little bit better at night, looking at it that way.
Well, I think that's rational.
Yeah, you try to rationalize everything, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to. I mean, you have to you seek answers, I guess is a better way to put it, is that
To a question there's usually not an answer to.
yeah, and I'll be honest with you that there's the police still have her things. They have her phone, they have her notebooks where she wrote some things. And I purposely haven't gone down that road. But even when I get the stuff, which will probably be in the next few weeks, I'm just going to store it away. I don't want to look into it. I don't want to blame anybody.
Yeah.
I'm
Even
not,
yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you really want to know what's in it? Because it doesn't change anything for the better.
Doesn't change the
It
fact.
can change things,
Yeah.
no doubt. But I don't see how it changes anything for the better, because either I look into that and I find out that she wrote things about me that make me feel responsible, or she wrote things about somebody else that makes me feel like they're responsible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to blame anybody for this.
Yeah.
You know, she made a decision, a very costly decision, and I don't want to be angry.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I go down that road, and I may feel differently 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, but
And that's
I don't,
okay.
I don't want to go down that road of being angry, because the way that I'm built, my anger could destroy me,
Yeah.
and I don't want to let it.
Good for you, man. I think that's healthy. I really do. You know, here's one thing that I absolutely want to get out in this podcast, this segment is, if you have a million 13-year-olds right now watching this, I want you to, best you can, describe the pain
You know, we
as a
talk,
parent.
we talk about that. You know, as I've had the conversation with my ex-wife a few times, and you know, she's actually made this statement, that if Kate knew how much she was hurting us, that she never would have done it. And I don't think that, you know, I'm not saying that no suicide has ever been perpetuated because somebody wasn't trying to hurt somebody. I'm sure that that's happened, and I'm sure that they were really trying to hurt somebody.
Right.
But in this particular case, I don't think it had anything to do with hurting us. As a matter of fact, I think she was in a place in her brain that was no longer seeing anything else other than whatever it was that was causing her pain.
Yeah.
And wanting to that pain to stop. And it wasn't intended to hurt anybody.
But I want because I have a 13-year-old. I want my 13-year-old watching this podcast, and I want you to describe to him how painful it would be for me.
Well, I will tell you that we are a very close family. My parents and my sister and my brother and my sister's husband and my brother's wife, and you know, my brother's got 2 little girls who are very close with Kate. I mean, this it reverberates through the first layer. I haven't counted. Maybe it's 15, 17 people that will never ever be the same again.
Ever.
You know, for me, and you know, hopefully this changes, but nothing seems great anymore. You know, the sun comes out, and you know, you enjoy little bits and pieces of your day, but most of it fucking sucks, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, you just, you know, I make it a real point to make sure that I don't hide the way that I feel about anything in life, and it's just the way that I'm built. But I totally understand how somebody in this situation would develop a drinking problem or a drug habit or some other unhealthy habit to just try to cover this shit up.
Or just weight loss, sleepless nights.
Yeah, I mean, here we are 3 months later, and it's not like if I expect to be healed at 3 months. But you know, this morning here's my routine, right? So I go to bed 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I sleep until about 2, and I wake up, and first thing I do is I get up and I go down and I check on Tyler to make sure he's okay. And then maybe one time out of 4, I come back upstairs and I go back to sleep. For 3 times out of 4, I don't go back to sleep. So I sleep from 11 to 2, and then I lay in bed from 2 to 6 or 5, or maybe I get back to sleep for an hour. But it's, at least now I wake up and I don't feel like I did at first. At first I'd wake up and I would, so at first you actually welcome whatever sleep you can get, because you get to disappear.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't feel, consciously you don't feel
Yeah.
the pain.
No, I talked to a lady one time that was so high on anxiety, and she said, I love sleep. It's the only time that I can get away from it.
Yeah.
So this is similar.
Absolutely. And so at first I would wake up, and you wake up and you have this split second of waking up and feeling like everybody else. Not like everybody else feels good all the time.
Right.
But then, for me, it was having that moment of, I just woke up and I feel rested or whatever. And then it's like somebody sitting there with me every time I woke up, reminding me that Kate just died. So there's nothing that can ever compare to the first time you hear that, Kate's dead. I mean, still to this day, I can't even process those words.
Yeah.
It's almost like I haven't seen her for a while, The finality of it, I don't know if I'll ever grasp that. But when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's like learning all over again that she's died. She's dead.
Yeah.
That she died.
I can totally see that.
For I don't know, weeks on end.
Is that your first thought?
Oh yeah. It's not anymore. My thought now is coronavirus.
Yeah. What's that going to do?
But and I don't mean to make light of it.
No.
Levity, right?
Yes.
At its finest. But yeah, so it's like learning all over again that she's dead. And I would immediately break down and cry to exhaustion, and then I get to go back to sleep because I was so fucking tired, right?
Yeah.
Now I don't go back to sleep because I don't cry, For some reason I don't cry.
Yeah.
I don't know why, what the story is with that, and I'm sure that Sigmund Freud would have a field day with it. But
somebody will have an opinion on it.
Yeah. So that, that was, it is so, it felt like you just got run over by a truck for, every moment of every day for weeks and weeks. I think that eventually the shock does wear off, because it has to, or if you would die, honestly.
Yeah.
You'd die of broken heart if your body didn't figure out some way to escape that.
Yeah.
All the time. Not that I don't feel it at all anymore, because I do. But I think your body, your wonderful mechanism that it is, has a way of figuring that stuff out.
I think I may have a little bit of insight on that, and I'm gonna throw it out right now. You're a religious guy.
Very.
And I'm a believer as well. And I think that's the only way I could get through that.
It's funny. I've had my journey with my faith over the years, and when everything's great, it's not like I don't ever that I just stop believing in God from time to time, but you stop talking to God when everything's great, right?
Yeah.
You stop, you don't say, hey, thanks, God, for making everything great.
Yeah.
But you sure as hell talk to him when everything is awful.
Yeah.
Right? And, you see that with prisoners. And you know what? Easter was just last weekend, and, I insisted upon the fact that we rewatch Passion of the Christ. And, it's so obvious that that's what Jesus was, is he picked people up at their lowest point. And he sought those people out.
Yeah.
He didn't go after the ones who were killing it in life. You know,
Yeah.
he went after the ones that needed him most. Now I think that's,
How big has your faith been for you?
for the first few days, I questioned everything that I have ever believed. And it became pretty quickly evident that if I didn't talk to God and truly believe that Kate is in heaven and that I'll get to see her again. If I didn't believe that, I don't know what I'd do.
That was actually a question I was going to ask. Do you believe you'll see her again? Every fiber of you believe that?
Absolutely. I could not. I don't think I could go on without believing that.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about your case so many times. And it's interesting. I've had conversations with people, and those that don't believe, I just have a hard time wondering how you get through anything like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it was the way I was raised. Maybe, I don't know. But, I'm sitting here telling you I believe with 100% of my fiber you will as well. And I don't know of any other way to make sense of anything.
I don't either, and I've gotten to the point where I talk to God all day.
Yeah.
It's not a case of, hitting my knees at the end of the day and praying for a couple of minutes. I talk to Him all day, every day. I get up in the middle of the night, and I go check on Tyler. And I walk down the stairs, and I come to his door, and every time before I open the door, I pray that he's okay.
Yeah.
Prayer's an interesting thing. My belief is in free will, which is the greatest gift that we have because we're gives us the free will to love people. If we didn't have free will, we couldn't choose to love, which is the greatest thing there is. But also,
But with that comes consequences.
with it comes consequences to make a lot of bad choices too.
Yeah.
And so, I don't pray. I don't pray for me. I never pray for me. I pray for others.
I do. I think that's what we're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Ever since hearing about your story and just kind of knowing the guy you are, man, I mean, there's always going to be somebody that says something. I think you've tackled this as good as anyone could. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there is a right or wrong way. And I truly believe that you will see her again. I believe that with my fiber. I believe that with my family, the ones I love that have passed on. And God forbid, I want to be the one in the ground before any of my kids, that's for sure. My grandmother, who was a Pentecostal minister, by the way, she buried 3 of her children.
Wow.
And she said there's no worse pain. And I was kind of joking around with my brother one time, he's 60, he's 10 years older than I am. And we were just kind of joking around one day, and I said, man, it's got to be suck to you to be the oldest because you're going to die first. And he goes, no, it's going to suck worse. You're going to have to watch it. And, man, I tell you what, that sentence set me on my heels because he was dead serious. Yeah. And, man, I have never forgotten that. And, I mean, I can drive around thinking of my parents or my kids and just bawl like crazy without any real bad things have happened to me yet. But all I want to tell you is I think today, I'm not kidding, there's so many of these stories where I sit there and I say, you know what, we saved a life today. I hope parents listen to your words. I hope more kids listen to your words. I hope that we get this out to millions of people, and if nothing else, they at least have a conversation about it. Just a damn conversation, because you never know what that power is. I'm glad that you were straightforward and honest about your faith. I think that's huge. I think that's a big thing that, if people are feeling that way, turn that way. See what happens. I think good things will happen. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming in here and doing the hardest interview that a man can ever possibly do. And I want to tell you I love you, man. I do.
I appreciate that. Love you too, by the way. And if I can't take this and learn from it, I've learned a lot of different things. It's made me a way better parent to Tyler.
Yeah.
Than I was before. Way better father. But when this is going to be something that grows as I move forward, I have that unique position of having some awful street credibility.
Yeah.
For being that father that nobody wants to be. And so people listen. When I talk about these things, people listen because they know that it's coming from a place that is their worst nightmare.
Yeah. And you're not scared to say it how it is.
I'm not, absolutely not. And that comes from a lot of different places, but probably the most important is that and it really is just about one life. If I could dedicate my life to advocacy and prevention of suicide and save one life, it'd be worth it.
It's all we're trying to do.
And I think that there's the two, we didn't get into this much, and we can certainly talk more about it, but the tools that one of the things that kids this age, 13 years old, Kate was 13 years old, and the kids that she was around on a regular basis, and particularly that day, probably saw something or heard something, but they don't have any of the tools to know what to do. They don't have the education. They don't have the knowledge, and I think they need to. I mean, we need to somehow talk to kids.
Maybe even scared to say something.
Yeah, but educating, taking the time to not be afraid to talk to kids about this. That's really I ran into right away. Is that at the school level, they don't want to talk about it. They're scared, and God bless the teachers and the counselors. At Kate's school, they're awesome. I know that this weighs heavily on them, and one of them is a very good friend of mine, and I know this weighs heavily on them. But you got a school nurse, and how many students? I don't know how many students Westlake has. Hundreds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with any of that? With that has any impact at all? You can't, as a administrator, a teacher, or a nurse. The resources are the hundreds of other kids.
You know what? I liked what you said earlier. You said you got to meet them at their level.
Right.
How about a program where, these kids can text the nurse or text somebody like so-and-so I think is having some issues. So-and-so is doing
Anonymously,
this.
right?
Anonymously.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, meet them at their level.
Yeah.
That's a potential, something that I think would be good, because that's all kids do is text anymore anyway.
Absolutely. And I've talked to countless parents and kids as well, and they don't know, they wouldn't know what to do. And even today, they still don't have any idea what to do in that kind of a situation. If somebody says, I don't want to be in this life anymore.
Yeah.
Which is what you said, actually.
Yeah.
Nobody knows your kid doesn't know what to do with that. Another 12, 13-year-old kid doesn't know what to do with that. They don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
And so, this has got to be much more of an open conversation, and a regular conversation. You got to talk about this kind of stuff because it's probably the most dangerous thing that exists in schools today is the depression. And I mean, it's not like you and I when we were younger. If we're getting bullied, we got bullied for a few hours during the day. Now there's no escape. It's cyberbullying
All the time.
You get that 24 hours a day. You can't escape it, and so it's got to be so much heavier and constant, and that's got to play into
it does.
the differences we see in teen suicide these days. And so, as far as I can tell, and again, I'm just starting my journey on trying to tackle the advocacy and the education and the prevention. It's just not there.
I tell you what, this is so important to me too, and primarily because I also have kids. But I want to bring you back in a year or so, and we talk about what changes can be done and what has been done. Or if you start implementing some things, or wherever, you let us know. We'll do a complete other podcast on it. I mean, this is, I don't know if all of them are preventable, but one is. And one at a time.
That's the only way you tackle this is one at a time.
Yeah.
Because kids aren't machines. They're very, very individual. They're people. They're little people, man.
They are
as individual as you can get.
It's so true. Another thing that I kind of want to break up, I just kind of had a thought process of was, when you went to the rationalization that it's an illness, much like cancer, much like whatever else. I think that is a beautiful, at least starting point or idea, because then if other kids looked at it like cancer, so if one of their classmates had cancer, they would just be like, oh, they have cancer. So if they feel like they're sick, they're nauseous, the kid may call somebody and say, hey, you know what, Johnny looks like he's sick today. You know what, maybe if we thought about that, I think it's a phenomenal just idea that you had there. They thought about, they know someone's struggling or something, but they perceive it as an illness, be like, you know what, I think he's having something today.
Yeah, there's obviously that stigma that goes along with mental health issues, but it's really no different than a kid who's a diabetic.
Yeah.
And their friends understand that if Johnny's
blood sugar gets low.
If his blood sugar gets low and it's obvious, and they're going to do something about it because
Yeah.
they know because it's an open, honest subject, and mental health is not, and we need to make it.
Man, I love that.
Open.
I love that. I think that's powerful, dude. I really think that's really powerful. Yeah, maybe we need to just change the way we see it.
Absolutely, and I keep coming back to the same thing: is you have to meet them at their level, whatever that is. And I don't claim to know what thehave level is because they're kids and I'm not.
Yeah.
But I know in my daughter's particular situation, if somebody would have opened the door to that room and let a puppy in there, she'd be alive today.
Yeah. Brother, again, I appreciate you doing this podcast more than you'll ever know. I hope we saved one life, and I think we did. I think there's somebody going to listen to this.
I hope so, brother.
Have the conversation. Maybe have their kids watch it. Yeah. Again, love you, man. I appreciate everything you've done.
Anytime, man.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.